Even if you remember one face, it would be enough. But always remember it's only one face, multiplied by 6 million. Each person has his or her own way of expressing what nobody can ever express, the ineffable experience. Only God's name is ineffable, but it's not so. Our experience too is ineffable.
How did a hate group that once governed a nation vanish, only to survive in plain sight? Today on Facts on Trial, we're exposing the inconvenient truth. They never disappeared. While World War II has fascinated historians for decades, what happened to the perpetrators of one of the greatest evils in human history is less often discussed. Today on Facts on Trial, we're examining the hard truth about what happened to the Nazis after World War II, and why so many got away with it. After the Allied victory in 1945, Germany was divided into zones controlled by the US, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. Each zone had a different approach to denazification, the plan to remove Nazi influence from society. But from the very beginning, the effort was flawed. Let's start with the numbers. About 400,000 Germans were detained after the war for possible Nazi involvement. Sounds like a lot, until you consider that around 45 million Germans were Nazi Party members, collaborators, or sympathizers. That means less than 1% were ever detained. The reason? Sheer magnitude. Imagine trying to hold every member of a totalitarian regime accountable when they're also your lawyers, doctors, judges, teachers, even your police. Take the British zone. 90% of all lawyers had Nazi ties. You can't run a post-war justice system with no legal professionals, so they made a quiet compromise. Allow 50% of legal positions to be held by nominal Nazis, people who had joined the party but weren't real Nazis. The French ran into the same issue with teachers. After firing 3/4 of them for being Nazi-affiliated, they had to rehire many just to reopen schools. The Soviets were harsher. Their internment camps were notoriously brutal. This pushed many former Nazis to flee westward, claiming they were escaping communism, not justice. Of all the zones, the French were the most lenient. They viewed all Germans as responsible for the war and saw little point in making fine distinctions. By 1946, just 1 year after the war ended, the Allies handed denazification over to the Germans themselves. That's right, Germany was now in charge of punishing its own war criminals. So what happened? Predictably, the rules became much looser. Anyone born after 1919 was deemed too young to be held responsible. Thousands were labeled followers rather than leaders and given lighter consequences or none at all. Public officials that had been removed were reinstated. By 1948, the process was so watered down that 90% of Nazis were classified as lesser offenders. By 1951, denazification was officially over. Meanwhile, thousands of high-ranking Nazis didn't stick around to see if they'd be punished. Instead, they escaped, many to South America. Argentina was the top destination. Under President Juan Perón, a known admirer of fascist regimes, Argentina created secret escape routes. Nazi fugitives traveled through Italy and Spain using falsified Red Cross passports and forged Argentine visas. Some assumed fake identities, but many lived under their real names, confident that Argentina wouldn't extradite them. And they were right. Perón didn't welcome Nazis out of compassion. He saw them as assets. Military minds, technical experts, people who could help Argentina modernize and expand its power. It wasn't asylum, it was recruitment. But Argentina wasn't alone. As the Cold War began, both the US and the Soviet Union realized they needed scientists, especially those with advanced knowledge in weapons, rocketry, and chemical engineering. Enter Operation Paperclip, a secret American program to recruit Nazi scientists and engineers before the Soviets got to them. People like Werner von Braun, who developed Nazi V-2 rockets that bombed London, were brought to the US and given jobs at NASA. Others helped build the Pentagon's post-war weapons programs. These were not small names. They were men with blood on their hands. But their skills were deemed more important than their crimes. Some were literally kidnapped and flown to the US. Others came voluntarily, aided by a deliberately murky vetting process. The same government that liberated Auschwitz also hired its architects. That's not irony, that's strategy. The Nuremberg trials in 1946 were a global event meant to bring justice, but they were never designed to handle the full scale of Nazi crime. Only 24 top Nazis were tried in the first round. 12 were sentenced to death. That's a drop in the ocean of guilt. The trials made history, but they also gave the illusion of closure. Justice was limited to those already caught. Many others walked free. Some Nazis lived out their lives in obscurity. Others were hunted down by individuals, not governments. People like Simon Wiesenthal, a Holocaust survivor turned Nazi hunter, tracked down war criminals like Franz Stangl, who ran euthanasia programs targeting disabled people. Stangl was found and sentenced to life in prison. One of the most famous captures was Adolf Eichmann, mastermind of the final solution. He was discovered in Argentina in 1960 by Israeli intelligence. Disguised and drugged, he was smuggled out of the country and brought to trial in Israel, where he was convicted and executed. It was one of the only times a Holocaust architect ever faced true justice. But for every Eichmann, there were thousands who disappeared, some into the suburbs of America, some into quiet jobs in the German civil service, some into the night. By 1960, 77% of senior officials in West Germany's Ministry of Justice were former Nazis. That's not a rumor, that's documented fact.
The uncomfortable truth is this: the world moved on.
The Cold War made the past inconvenient. Justice gave way to politics. By 1951, nearly 800,000 Nazis had been pardoned by the West German government. So, was Germany ever really denazified? On paper, yes. In practice, hardly. The legacy of Nazi crimes didn't end in 1945. It lingered. It reshaped itself. It got jobs, wore suits, and kept quiet. The ideology wasn't eradicated, it was repurposed. Sometimes for science, sometimes for power, always for convenience. Nazi ideology wasn't crushed. It was repackaged within democratic institutions and global superpowers. Perceptions of denazification were convenient illusions, serving political expediency rather than justice. The structures of power, judiciaries, universities, intelligence agencies, were built, not destroyed, by Nazis rewriting their own histories. The Vatican, Spanish clergy, Swiss banks, and Western intelligence agencies were all complicit in aiding Nazi fugitives. Declassified documents reveal that Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank continued to hold Nazi-linked accounts well into the 2000s. In Argentina, Josef Mengele applied to legally revert to his real name because he knew he wouldn't be touched. Even today, evidence suggests certain companies, governments, and institutions may still be shielding the remnants of Nazi financial and political influence. Today, we ask, why didn't the Nazis disappear? The answer is simple: because we let them stay. Not just in Germany, but in Argentina, in the United States, in our institutions, in our blind spots. That's all for this episode of Facts on Trial. If this left you thinking, share it. And let us know what other overlooked truths you want us to put on trial next.